Well, that was pretentious again, wasn't it? That sort of death ride music as you storm across the plains, blade in hand. Powerful steed coursing away as you rush unerringly towards your enemy. But will it sustain you for the long term? I don't know. Probably not. You'll probably get mashed as you hit the front line. Yeah, we're going to talk about emergent campaigns today. Oh, I fancied it. And for me, within the context of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So we'll talk a bit about that, and hopefully it'll become clear after I stop warbling. But you will notice, well, I'll ask you a question actually. Can you see the glue? Can you see the glue? It's on the table. It's on the table right there. Back to face-to-face gaming. Are you heading back to face-to-face gaming? You're probably going to tell me you never left, but new to me. Sticking battle mats together, making tokens, and presenting a 4th edition demo game at UK Games Expo. That's now a big one. It's a fairly big one. I think the footfall is about 25,000 unique visitors in 3 days. So for us, that's us in the UK. That's fairly big. Well, I'm taking the 4th edition of the Dragon game over there to play it out. This looks like a little case for some earbuds. It's not really. I've made some cards. So this is not really an art and craft session, this particular video, but I made some cards. So I've just taken the character builder, and for a character, all the things they can do are on little cards. Because, you know, it's the 4E Renaissance. Did you not know? So yeah, bit of fun. But that's good short-term stuff. And I think I'll pull off quite a fun game at UK Games Expo. What I wanted to talk about a little bit was emergent campaigns and maybe something about what they are. And yeah, what is a campaign actually in a role play context? How upfront do your goals for a campaign need to be? How planned in does the framework need to be for your campaign? Well, for this YouTube video, we're going to talk a little bit about emergent campaigns, how sometimes long-form play can well up organically from fairly simple beginnings. Now, it could be that I'm focusing a little bit more on time now because I actually retire this week. But I really think one of the most important considerations when you're running a campaign, you're thinking about a multi-session game at least, that you want to run is how long you really have to play it through. You know, how long have you really got? Or how long do you think it will take, even if it's just an estimate? If you take the premise that the most valuable thing that any of us can give is our time, well, it's a resource that we should treat with respect and courtesy, really, to those who have agreed to come and play. Up front, having a view of the duration, the elapsed time of the game is important. It will help shape what it is you can do with the game, and I guess it will also set the expectations of the people who have come to play. But what is a campaign? Well, I did have a look at some definitions, and it's an old name. I went to the Cambridge Dictionary, and the definitions would say a planned group of especially political, business, or military activities that are intended to achieve a particular aim. Okay. Or more simply, to organise a series of activities to try to achieve something. That's about as basic as it gets, really. In the roleplay game context, the actual term campaign itself is an old name, well, for something. And I suspect how we use the term now is a little different to how it perhaps was originally conceived in the earlier phases of the hobby. So let's see what that is. Well, I would say that a recognisably contemporary description will involve a sequence of adventures, possibly with an overarching theme or linked goal, a continuing roster of players, and probably characters. A play sequence where the characters grow, both in terms of game advancement and in their shared relationships, their own stories, and affecting change to the setting in which the game is being run. A moment in time, really, where the shared stories of the characters changes the story of the setting in which you play. Now, a campaign may well also have plot, events that take place either with and influenced by the story or independently of it. So as the very similitude of the world shimmers with the glamour of being a real other place. It could be, and despite my 40 years of gaming, I'm not positioning this view remotely definitively, that the early meaning of the term is much more about a perpetuating setting, the game, which can be interacted via a series of groups of players. And that there can be swap over of players between tables, and as the campaign actually progresses. So it's less about one group's story and instead a story of a setting and the more improvised interactions of multiple groups within it. And this might even explain a little bit some of the early design of D&D and why the emphasis was placed where it was in that design. Maybe. Perhaps the current Westmarch style of game, where a large roster of players, they self-determine and what's of interest really. They self-organise in terms of their play, possibly cleaves a little bit closer to the original definition of campaign. Maybe. Language, of course, is fluid and makes sense in the context and the time in which you say it. So I'm not going to particularly flap about the exact definition of the term, and I think others have probably encapsulated what it means pretty well already. So I would like to talk about campaigns, long-form campaigns, based on my journey of actually running one. The one that I'm running actually right now. So I've talked a little bit about this on my channel, and so I'm going to delve into a bit of detail about how the campaign itself, well, emerged. So, we're about 35 sessions in. Now, that in itself for me is quite remarkable, but there you are. It's more than a year of elapsed time now. One group, we've had one change of player in that time. And I didn't know what it was going to be when I set out. So I didn't set out to run a game for a year with a continuing roster of players. That wasn't my plan. The themes that I wanted to explore emerged during play, not at the beginning. And were inspired by the suggestions and the ideas that were in the actual books that I was using and the conversation that was taking place around the table. So I didn't start with an overarching meta plot or anything like that, or any notion of how long the series of games would last. I just wanted to give it a go. So let me just transition across to Nentir Vale. So this is kind of where I've set it. I took a starting scenario to get me going, really. The March of the Phantom Brigade. I mean, the first vehicle for me, really, was actually 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons all round. I had a strong retail interest in it. I was buying it. And I felt I needed to justify the buying. I wanted to get some play in, so I suppose get my money's worth, really. I was genuinely interested to see how the game would play on the virtual table. So I didn't start, as I say, with this overarching goals, but I did want to see it in play, and I picked the default setting, which is there's a map of it there. It's Nentir Vale. I did start with a scenario book to get myself going, and that is the one I picked. I picked March of the Phantom Brigade, and those of you who know your 4E will probably know that scenario quite well. I wanted to use it as a way of letting myself in gently. Now, I built some tools in the Roll virtual tabletop, which I've talked about before, to facilitate online play. and we had a platform which would enable us to meet together and actually game during the pandemic. I suppose a word on Roll Virtual Tabletop is for me the best virtual tabletop I've seen for putting players front and center. So it's essentially it's like a video conferencing suite with tools around the edges. So the real emphasis is on being able to see and hear people as if you are sat round a table. I think that's the idea. It has just enough to support tactical play, tactical combat play. With maps and tokens. I would say most other virtual tabletops I've seen support maps and tokens a little better. So it's not its strength area, but it's got just enough to allow you to have a go with that. I like this adventure, March of the Phantom Brigade. It's first to third level, so it kicks you off at the right level. I wanted to start at level 1 and just see how it went. It provides an opportunity for the characters to immediately change the setting. And actually, I thought quite like that. The story has them guarding a caravan of settlers off to create a new point of light. I won't give any spoilers to the adventure itself. You're fine. If you actually want to play it, that's great. It'd be great to go back to it. The setting is a settlement in an old fortification to the south. And straight away, the core theme of 4th edition of the Dragon game was there in the concept of this scenario book. I was getting them to create something new, push back against the darkness and create a better place. The core possibilities, the central theme was right there at the start. They also got to splat some sturges, I'll give that away. And maybe a little bit of undead, get spooked by that. So there was that as well. Now, being the Dragon game, we had exploration, some nice combat encounters right off the bat, and some early connection with a sense of place. Now, for me, thinking about long-form campaign play, that was probably, I don't know how many sessions that was. I didn't play out both halves. There are 2 halves to this scenario book. I played out the first half of it, or the first part of it, as a setup. I suppose the game could have ended there quite happily. I'd be very happy. I'd have fulfilled much of my goals, and whereas it wouldn't have been a long campaign, in fact, arguably, actually, it wouldn't at that point have been any sort of a campaign. It just taught me that I love the game. I played it. I liked it. I thought it played out really well. I liked how it played out. You know, 4th edition is a very heroic fantasy game. You could argue all the D&Ds are like that, but they are quite different in the way that they manifest themselves at the table. I would say, I mean, I've spoken a lot about how much I like 4th edition in other videos. I won't dwell too long on it, but it certainly clothes your characters in heroic powers. So you get that real sense of standout for the characters in the setting. It's a nice group of players, and there was actually enthusiasm for more. I had some players who were sort of old hands, if you like, at 4th edition, and others who were brand new to it and hadn't played it before. So a really nice mix. So from here, the sense of campaign I thought might start to grow. I wasn't sure. But I continued the core theme of PC heroes maintaining points of light by encouraging them west. And I took them to a marvellous mini sandbox, a 4th edition sandbox in Nentier Vale at Harkenwald. And the mini campaign that's set there, the Reavers of Harkenwald. There it is. Says it all. That's one of the Iron Circle. They're not very nice. And yeah, I thought, why not? Let's take them there. I've heard good things about it. I'll just run some more stuff. So as yet, not really a campaign. I'm still effectively doing common roster of players, interlinked scenarios. But what I wanted to achieve started to crystallize in that setting, in that mini sandbox. Now, that played out again for quite some time. We played right through the Reavers of Harkenwald. I won't provide any spoilers, but it's a really nice little mini campaign. And I would say once again, actually, probably if it ended there, I, again, would have been perfectly happy. I felt incredibly lucky already, actually, that I had preserved the interest of the players for as long as I had. But truth be told, we were quite enjoying what we were doing. I think each other's company a little bit, and the story we were telling. And I signalled a season end. And this enabled me to properly pause and check in with the players and gauge the mood, because I hadn't specifically set up front to the players how long this would take. And so I to basically taste my own medicine, I really fair that I just say, well, how's it going? Are you enjoying playing? Do you want to continue for another segment? Let's have a season end. It's a good pause. It's an opportunity for you to go out and do something else. If you want to carry on as a continuing roster, then please do. So we did that, and we started to form effectively a bit of a company. We're still in play with another season commissioned, which we're playing now. But now I've got an end goal. I now know what I want to do with this overarching story, these themes, and this continuing roster group of players. We'll see how it goes. I'd like to see a full heroic tier campaign. Now, in D&D 4E terms, that's levels 1 to 10. And it's the first tier of play. A full heroic arc. Currently, the players are at level 6, so we're quite a way through, though. They've just literally hit 6 last night, actually. Much excitement. So, yeah, Nentir Vale. Well, first of all, Sturm and Drang. What can I say? They are Sturm and Drang. That's the group. They've got a sense of company already, and notoriety as they start to make a name for themselves. If you like, they are now greater than the sum of their individual character sheets. They are Sturm and Drang, and people are starting to get to know who they are. So Harkenwald, the setting for Reavers of Harkenwald, was a great catalyst, really. I think it was a good place to really start base and start to work through some themes. And again, point of light, a point of hope in a sea of darkness. And the point of the campaign is that you preserve and maintain that. Core themes running through, which I think is really nice. Yeah. This is set also, of course, in the overall Nentir Vale setting, which I've shown you before. A whole series of points of light. And I wanted to do something with the setting, I think, as much as anything else. So back to that early idea of campaign, I suppose. What does all this mean for the place, the sense of place? Well, the Nentir Vale is a northerly province of Old Empire. And it's only one. If I just pop in, there we go. So this is the 4th edition campaign world. The little box at the top left there is Nentir Vale, pretty much. So that's the bit that we're focused on, this northerly province of, well, a variety of kingdoms and empires, of which Narath is the one that is most significant for this northerly province. So it's interesting. What about something about Narath? And I thought, well, how about the ancient line of emperors returns? It's a theme actually in one of the books, the sort of novels of 4th edition. It's basically a theme that runs. I thought, well, I could take and use that. So, what happens if the emperor is going to come back after several generations of empire gone? The line continues, and not where any of the many factions are expecting. Which faction will Sturm and Drang support, and will the old power of Narath return up here in the north? So that's what I wanted to explore, and with a climactic event probably that will answer that question, and Sturm and Drang will be right in the centre, working through what's going to happen. In some ways, they will be key determinants of this possible future. And so around the PCs, the factions will they will start to form. The line of emperors, the Iron Circle we've talked about, Reavers of Harkenwald, invaders from the south, a mad undead emperor, the first emperor, in fact, of Narath, of long ago. He's back. He's causing a nuisance. The ancient dragons of the north. Well, Sturm and Drang have already met one of the ancient dragons and effectively are marked by that dragon, Shadowmire. And they are, to an extent, well, scions of the dragon? Not sure. But basically the dragons themselves, and there are several up here, all with personalities, they'll have a part to play in deciding what happens because, well, it's their land. That's the way they see it anyway. Ghosts of warrior pasts? Yeah, there are ghostly warriors out here. Maybe they'll have an actual active part in determining the future. A family of assassins may be involved. The Dragonborn are up here seeking a rekindling of their own empire of ancient times. Might be a factor. Tieflings are up here too, wanting the same for their own ancient Baal Turath. Well, perhaps they've got a part to play. There are factions up here who already believe that they are, if you like, the successors of Narath. Well, what will they think if it turns out they're not? Will they have a part to play in that? They probably will. The elves and ents of the two great forests, Harken and Winterbowl, they may well have a part to play. This was once all a great forest, it isn't anymore. Eladrin dreams of the past and present because they see the two as basically being the same. The Eladrin will have a part to play too. They always do. You know, they claim to be fine off in the Feywild. Nah, they're always messing about. And resurgent orc tribes, particularly the Bloodspear, who were highly instrumental in shaping the end of Narath up here. They'll come back. They'll have a part to play. They'll have something to say. Having been pushed out, they may want to be pushed back in again. That's kind of up to them. There'll be others. So these will come together, and I do have a mind map actually on the relationships because it got a bit complicated. So I've got one of those as well. Now through this we will explore some of the PC backstories. All the characters that I've shown you, Sturm and Drang, have got, you know, backstories. I think a mark of a campaign actually is that the backstories are hooks for good play and make what you are doing personal, as well as setting transformational, if you like. Backstories are really only useful if they become front stories. A backstory written on a piece of paper that never sees any light of play is no good to anyone. Not really very interesting. It might slightly inform personal play, but that's not very exciting. Get them visible, get your backstories visible, and inform and drive actual play. Assumptions in the backstory can also be challenged and changed by the experience at the table. So as play commences, those backstories will start to become front stories and will become real. In real life, we do write and rewrite our own narrative to make sense of and meaning as to who we are, really. So there's no reason not to afford that for the player characters as well, is there really? And now I now have an ending in mind, as I say. So we're going to get to some kind of an ending. Let's have a look. There's a lot of factions. I mentioned those factions a minute ago. We'll just show a picture. These sort of summarise some of the many factions that are in play at Nintia Vale. And I will take my own advice, though, which is not to hold too strong to the threads that I'm weaving. And there's a lot of threads there. You can see a lot of threads there. They're all independent or semi-linked, and they've all got a part to play in what's going to happen. I'm enjoying seeing these threads develop. but I think I need to guide them into the loom and let the process work through the pattern to produce the finished campaign. I don't need to get too heavy-handed with it, but I am enjoying seeing these threads, and where the PCs might have intervened, but because of their own choices they focused elsewhere, so the plot happened and they went off and did some stories somewhere else. The story will take its own path, so will the plot, and they're not really the same thing. We can also only tell really probably comfortably as a group one main story, possibly with some side stories and some smaller ones, but largely it's one story. There is a sandbox element to this, as you can see, with the sense that the world moves around them and almost independently of them, but at times hugely dependent upon them. I think that's a mark of a really good campaign if you've got something that does that. A sense of group and a sense of group affecting setting. And in all this, hopefully you've seen that I have some running themes with what I do. Don't hold on to your campaign too tightly. Stay loose and see how it develops. You might explore some narrative back alleys. That's fine. Cul-de-sacs, if you like. Enjoy them and then move on. A campaign is a lengthy journey. It could be. And as with life, the trick, I think, is to enjoy every step of it and not to fixate too much on the end point. The end point will provide you with a satisfying conclusion, but it's not the point of doing it. The point of doing it is the doing of it. And whether your campaign of continuing story lasts a year, 2 years. I mean, I've heard podcasts, people talking about games that have been running for many, many years. Well, great. For me, it's probably going to be about a year and a half. I'm going to say, if I'm back talking here next year and I'm still on it, then it wasn't quite what I was expecting. So let's recap slightly with all these factors in play. I'll come back to me, I think. Yeah. Upfront planning of a campaign is a good thing to do. It gives you a framework to play in, some explicit goals you can develop as you go, and it manages players' expectations, which I think is critical, actually, as to the amount of time they should consider committing to, and that's fair. You know, if you make this explicit, I also think it's important to stick to it. You know, with any extensions to the story, well, that can happen, but it's optional rather than expected, and it needs to be negotiated with the players, I think. They've got busy lives, your players probably, and if you proceed with them at the heart whilst recognising that good stories, have good endings or satisfying endings, and you want to try and achieve that. Now, there are a lot of games out there that already have lengthy pre-written campaigns, adventure paths that you simply play through, actually. Some of them are quite famous. Some of them might even be notorious, actually. But, you know, they are out there. And running one of those gives you a pre-packaged campaign with many of the questions set out or ready to go, ready to explore. You just pitch and run. Now, either way, at some point your campaign is going to emerge. For me, it emerged organically in play, rather than being pre-written. It arrived pretty much whole-formed out of the cloth that had been weaved so far. But, you know, either way, it will emerge. And try to get it to culminate in a satisfying conclusion. Then you feel you've had a full story, an arc that is memorable. I think quite often our campaigns can, through no one's particular fault, either because of energy, and GM energy is critical, just kind of fizzle, or we'll have a pause, that classic we'll have a pause moment in your campaign. And it turns out to be a stop rather than a pause. I've experienced that. So that can happen. But try and get to a good ending if you can. And if everyone is having fun at the table, if your campaign takes a little time to emerge out of the play that you're having, but fun is being had, that's kind of okay. That's all right, I think. And then you get the structure in place and you can manage expectations. That's also important. All to the good. And so far, 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons has been a great example of that and the play that has taken place. And well, it's one that I'll repeat, actually, to tell other stories, either with the group that I have now or maybe with others. I think I will come back to 4th edition for long form play, which again, I like a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons. They're kind of built for it, given the leveling structures. To give a fuller context, in 40 years of my gaming, this Emergent campaign has been one of my best, I think, and without a shadow of a doubt, the longest for me, actually, the longest I've ever experienced. I wasn't actually sure if I had one of these long and developing series in me as a DM or a GM. Again, it's sort of emerged, but I'm jolly glad it has. It's been really, really nice. Now, my next campaign, I think, will be The Secrets of the Sorcerer. It's a pre-written, so this time it's pre-written. It's a Modifius Conan 2D20 mini campaign. Looking at it, I'd say about 12 sessions, maybe, roughly that. And it'll be run in Foundry Virtual Tabletop, which has got a little Conan module on there, which I will use. So I'm busy putting the assets into the virtual tabletop to ready for play. And I'll hopefully find somebody to play with. It'd be good, I think. So that's all packaged, ready for me to share. It will be when I've finished that. It's up front and waiting to be told. But yeah, for now, well, it's 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I'm playing right now, and that's the story that I'm telling, kind of right now. And well, until the next time, for more stories. That was my Emergent campaign. Formed slightly unexpectedly. It just came and I just thought, no, I know what I want to do with it now. And the players are settled, they're enjoying it, they're enjoying each other's company. And so I have a platform in which I can be confident to tell a really good story and bring it to a really satisfying conclusion. Well, I hope that's been of interest. Emergent campaigns, it doesn't have to be pre-written. You don't have to know everything up front, but it can bubble up as you play. And I think once you get to the point that you know where you're going with it, and you can sort of zero in to that satisfying conclusion, it will deliver for you a really good game. I'm really enjoying my 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons at the moment, and I'm enjoying the game largely because, of course, I'm enjoying watching the players play and participating in play with them. Nice group of players, couldn't ask for better. So there you are. That's Emergent Play. Cheers.